So why do you stop doing the TikTok lives?
Well, now I have YouTube, I have Substack, I have TikTok, I have my LinkedIn. It's enough platforms for my business goals to be doubling down on, if that makes sense. The TikTok lives is just additional effort. It's great for community building. So it's great because people who join me maybe in the last 30 days, when they realize I'm live, they will come and say hello, and I get to tell them, go to Substack, go to YouTube. But from an energy resource perspective, it doesn't make sense for me to do them weekly. So realistically, I tend to do them once every 6 weeks, once every 8 weeks, so that I can focus on growing the platforms that I think there is a business model in. And TikTok Live isn't going to be the best route for that.
Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. For most of her career, Ashanti Bentil-Due didn't have a social media presence, but after spending a decade running a consulting business, she moved from the UK to New York and decided to start sharing her ideas publicly for the first time. Armed with little more than an iPhone, she began posting unscripted TikTok videos about the experiences of single women. Within months, she had built an audience of hundreds of thousands of followers and expanded into a media business that now includes a Substack publication, YouTube channel, and consulting. In a recent interview, Bentil-Due explained how she built a large audience despite having no prior social media experience, why she believes consistency matters more than high-end production, and how she's turning her growing platform into a sustainable business. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, gently tap on that subscribe button so you can watch more interviews with the world's most successful media entrepreneurs. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey Ashanti, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So super excited to have you on. I was looking at your various media accounts, and I've just been amazed by the amount of growth that you've had. And correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, but over 200,000 followers on TikTok in just 8 months. Perhaps even more impressive, 30,000 followers in YouTube in just 2 months. You've got several thousand on Instagram, like 15,000 on LinkedIn. So you were just in terms of the growth curve of creators, you were well ahead of that, the average curve. So super excited to find out what your secret was and how you did all that. Before we jump into that, I'd just love to just hear a little bit more about you and your background. I know you live in New York. Obviously, you're from the UK, and I was looking at your LinkedIn. It looks like you were a serial entrepreneur before even launching this latest venture. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about you and your background and everything before we even jump into the media part.
Yes, thank you. So I am a New York implant. I live here in New York. It's wonderful. But yes, I'm originally from the UK. My formative career was in financial compliance. So I worked in the corporate world, and then I left 10 years ago to build my own consultancy. And so over the last 10 years, I've done a lot of work around systems, regulation, cultural transformation, etc. within organizations. And very recently, I decided to share some of that work more publicly in the form of writing, speaking, and thinking publicly, which is really where the origin of Unpunishable Woman comes from.
And what made you move to New York?
I've always wanted to live here. I loved the city every time I visited, and I was coming more and more often, and I just felt my soul really called to come and experience living here. I think that there's so much wonderful opportunity here. You're in the midst of the entire world here. And even though I grew up in London, which is a very multicultural city, it really doesn't compare in terms of the type of diversity that's here in New York.
And did you launch your consulting company after you moved to New York, or was that prior?
Yeah, so Unpunishable Woman began after I moved to New York. So that was, I would say, October 2025 is when I first started to share content online. Before then, I didn't really have any personal social media. So I only used LinkedIn for the most part for my business. But the first time I've had any social media, so to speak, on the other platforms.
And I was actually talking about the previous consulting companies you're running, what those were in New York as well.
All pre-New York, yes. So I moved to New York with existing consultancy business.
And it seems like with the consultancy businesses, you were a solo entrepreneur who was being hired to work within larger organizations.
Yes, absolutely. And there have been periods of time over the last 5 years where I've had full-time employed employees. But I wind up and wind down as many entrepreneurs do in terms of my business model. And when I moved to New York, I didn't want to bring the responsibility of a team with me. And so I wound that down before moving to New York so I could be more free and discover what it is I wanted to do in this season of my life.
Yeah. And so from based on what I can tell, Unpunishable Media is kind of focused on a demographic of single women and kind of trying to figure out, given that it's a growing demographic, like where they fit within the workplace. In your previous consulting, was that some kind of theme that you were starting to notice, or like what was kind of your prior kind of experience with that in the corporate world?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, as you know, generally speaking, across the corporate world, there is always discourse around how we improve representation of women at senior levels in organizations, so mid management to senior level upwards. And of course, before preferred wording changed, so to speak, that was really the crux of a lot of diversity programs, okay, around gender diversity specifically, particularly in Europe and the UK. And so, yes, my work in the past has definitely focused on how representation can be shifted at those senior levels in organizations, how organizations can develop that talent, retain that talent, etc. But it wasn't focused specifically on single women. I am personally single by choice, child-free by choice, and I had seen that actually often we are missed out of the conversation around womanhood and what it means to be a woman in the corporate environment. A lot of the policies, understandably, are oriented around mothers. And of course, if you're a child-free woman, this doesn't necessarily apply to us. And also sometimes when it comes to flexible working, if you are a child-free woman, you may not be able to access flexible working as readily as those in your workplace who are parents. And so I had noticed some of those, of course, disparities, despite the fact that single women are on the rise. In fact, single adults, okay, are on the rise in ways unprecedented. And then, of course, if you're a single woman, what does that look like for us as single women overall in the workplace and society more generally?
So, like the companies you're consulting with, like they might have some kind of rule that makes it easier for a woman to leave early or something, and that's kind of, or maybe given extra leave or something like that, oriented towards like women who are mothers, but they were less forgiving for single women, and in terms of like they were maybe like had a greater burden than their like women who had children counterparts, things like that, like you were noticing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's understandable, right? When you think about overall the conversation about women, equality, equity, a large part of women's lives are governed by parenting and motherhood, and it has a massive impact on your career as a woman, especially if you're taking time out. It has an impact on the salary that you receive, the salary you return to, etc. And so it's understandable that a lot of policies and benefits within corporate workplaces, of course, have recognized the mother or the woman with children. But actually, more and more in the workplace are women who have opted out of motherhood, maybe by circumstance and also by choice. And so I think that, like many industries and sectors, they haven't necessarily shifted to recognize the different forms of womanhood that exist.
So I'm kind of fascinated that the fact that you had almost no social media presence before this, given how much success you had. I'd love to hear just like kind of the run up to the launch of I think the TikTok maybe was one of the earlier iterations, like the run up to it. Because like I've noticed watching your videos, you seem to be conversant with other TikTok accounts, even if you're not calling them out by name, but you seem to be responding to social trends you're seeing on social media. So like, what was your relationship with social media prior to launching these, and like how much like planning and strategy went into what you were doing in terms of looking for comps for other accounts that you wanted to kind of, take some of their ideas? What was kind of the lead up in October?
Yeah, so I was always afraid of like having personal social media. I do direct sales for my consultancy business, so there was no need for me to be on social media. I just do direct sales through email, LinkedIn DMs. So it didn't make any sense for me to even invest resource and time into having personal social media, because a B2B stakeholder isn't on Instagram looking for the work that I provide, right? So a part of it was just strategy and logistics of just sticking to using LinkedIn for my business. And then I was a bit scared of social media. I've obviously watched and observed people build platforms and communities, and it has its downsides. And I did not feel completely comfortable and confident even in building social media that was based around my face and being seen. And so that's why I avoided it for so many years. The only thing I would say is that I have had podcasts, but again, they were business podcasts that I use in my sales process. So people would get to know me because of my voice, but again, not because of my face at all. And so in October 2025, I had moved to New York. I thought to myself, do you know what? This is a piece of work that I want to share essentially with the world. I have something to say. I think I have enough expertise and judgment now around some of these topics, and it was time for me to start sharing. And so it did indeed start on TikTok, because with TikTok, I knew how to open an account. I knew how to press the little X, record a video and post it. I knew nothing about the SEO stuff. I knew nothing about the other functions and features, but I knew how to record a video and just post it. I would say my understanding of how to navigate these channels and look at how people, what strategies they're using, etc., that really came, I'd say, over the last 3 months. And I would say I've deployed more of that learning on YouTube than TikTok. TikTok kind of remains a place where I just put the camera on, say what I have to say and go. Whereas YouTube, I have done some learning and thought about how the platform actually functions and how I reach people on YouTube specifically.
So obviously 2024, Donald Trump wins the election and he basically does war on so-called DEI.
Yes.
Did that play any part in like your decision on when to launch or anything like that?
No, I mean, the thing about DEI work is that, look, DEI work has always existed. It always will. It just changes packaging. And because I had been working for myself for 10 years, I know the stakeholder business transformation language that you need to be using in a business development process and when it comes to delivery. Culture and talent retention, talent development will always be something a business needs to do because they need to be able to keep their workforce to deliver on business transformations. And so for me, it's always about language and always about understanding what the priorities of the business actually are. So in light of that kind of 2024 change did not really impact my business, so to speak. I just changed and adapted language where necessary, which is what any kind of half decent salesperson needs to understand how to do.
So if I were to talk to you in October 2025, what would you have said in terms of like what your goals were? Like, were you thinking about shifting your consulting business? And we're going to obviously get into like what your business is now, but like, was it like you just like, I want to do thought leadership, or were you like, I want to do XYZ so I can sell this service? Like, how much was the business already kind of factored into what you were trying?
Yeah, it absolutely wasn't. I just knew what you said, which is I do want to do thought leadership for the first time publicly. And because obviously if you look at my TikTok, those videos are very raw. They're very raw, homemade. I don't script anything. I just turn the camera on and show up. So at that time I was like, I'm just going to share ideas and what I really think about topics that I think are really important. And you picked up on something. Because of my naivety, I think, around how social media works. So for example, when I first went onto TikTok, I didn't even realize people could stitch or duet my videos. So every now and then I'd get this notification that said so-and-so stitched your video. And I was like, how on earth can they do that? I hadn't even noticed those functions and features. And so I was quite naive at the beginning, to be honest. I didn't realize people had started sharing the content on Facebook, on Instagram. And at the time I didn't have an Instagram. So those things were all new things to me. I was just literally kind of muddling my way through, essentially, in October, November and December. And then I realized, of course, being a businesswoman, people were asking me about very specific things about what I was talking about. So for single women, they were asking me, how did you start a consultancy? So I launched a single woman sales intensive and we sold out of that. I think we had 78 women sign up from all over the world. And that was the first time I monetized the Unpunishable Woman platform, and it was all through TikTok.
Yeah, and for context stitching, for people who don't know, it's like basically they're able to take your video, play it, and then they can put some commentary or some kind of response over it. So it's kind of like almost like a collaborative type of thing that TikTok allows, and now a lot of other platforms allow it. And we'll talk about this thing that you launched soon. But going back to that October 2025, can you walk us through like your first few videos, like how you were coming up with ideas for them and and how things started to kind of take off for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I'm probably quite fortunate because I'm 37. I've lived a little bit of life. I've traveled the world. So I didn't really have to script or plan content. I didn't even understand. I didn't even regard it as content. I would just switch on the camera and talk about the things that I felt it was important for single women, adult single women, to be aware of. And so at that stage, there was no overall big grand strategy. I wasn't working towards something. If I'm honest, when I first went on there, you see other people's accounts and you see that they might have 5K, 10. I had no concept that I would ever grow my account, if that makes sense. It's still quite surreal to me sometimes when I open the app and see how many people are actually following me. It's really quite bizarre. So I have lived experience, I have some expertise, and so I would just share about the same things, obviously, about being a single woman, how you view your identity, what does that look like in the modern world, what does that look like in the context of relationships, family dynamics, etc. So at that time, there was no grand structure, to be honest, either, around the content itself. All I had understood was you can post a video 2 to 3 times a day. And that's what I would do. I just post a video 2 to 3 times a day consistently.
And like, would you just pick like a single topic and then jot down some notes, or were you just like picking the topic and then just speaking extemporaneously about it for 4 minutes?
Extemporaneously entirely. And I should obviously in my work, I'm required to speak to people, right? I go in and I speak to C-suites and boards all the time. So speaking in itself is not a new skill for me. It's one that I obviously have developed over many years, but also I grew up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and one of the key things that they do when you're in that religion is they teach you how to preach and teach. So the extemporaneous speaking is kind of built into me, because when you're talking to people in real life at a bus stop or in a grocery store about what they think will happen when they die, you're not using notes, right? And so those were the skills I suppose I brought quite natively and organically into the Unpunishable Woman work.
And can you just give us an example of like like an early video that you remember doing, like what the topic was or anything like that?
Yeah, one of the first ones that went viral is I talked about the fact that I did not cook and clean. So that didn't go well. As a woman, I refuse to cook and clean. I do meal prep, and I will never agree to cook and clean for a man in a relationship. And of course, that didn't go down too well. It found itself on all sorts of platforms I didn't know existed. But I talked about the fact that women are more than servitude, more than utility, and that our identities belong to us, and that we have the power really to decide who we are. And that does require quite often withstanding the ways that society and culture and religion will often attempt to punish us as women if we divert from traditional status quo.
And how long did it take from when you first started posting for like your first like initial viral videos?
Not very long, actually. I think probably within the first 30 days. That video, I remember I was wearing like a yellow top. That video went viral onto other platforms I wasn't even on.
And what did you notice was happening with your account when you were starting to post these viral videos? Like, were there like immediate spikes in followers? Because I've heard that over time, TikTok and a lot of these other kind of more push-oriented platforms like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, like it doesn't correlate necessarily that something goes viral and a huge jump in followers. Like, what were you noticing in terms of like your following?
I think because, and it's a good point that you bring, and I've observed this since then in other people's accounts, I think because I have a core thought leadership topic and it's evident in my bio, that's why people follow me. So I don't do comedy, I'm not doing dance, I don't lip sync. And I think when you see sometimes some accounts that a video goes viral, but you look at their following, it doesn't correlate. It's often because the video itself is not necessarily aligned with what their core focus is on the platform that they're on. And so of course there's less incentive for people to follow you, right? They may find the video funny or interesting, but your account specifically might not be relevant to them. And I think because I've consistently talked about single women being an unpunishable woman, that has been the consistent theme. I think that has lent itself to people thinking, I want to hear more of this. And at the moment I have about 16% of that audience is male, which I found very interesting. So it hasn't necessarily meant that only women have followed along. Actually, we have quite a growing community of men.
And when you looked at the comments for the viral videos, who were your trolls? Who were your supporters? Like, what was the demographic? Like, was it men that were the trolls, or was it women that were the trolls as well?
I'd say initially it was more men. Absolutely. And then obviously as time shifts, as you know, because I talk about the importance of women being mature emotionally, I obviously don't believe that money comes from men. And that is a real sticking point for a lot of women who've been conditioned to believe that men should be providers, and that if a man doesn't provide for them financially, this is in some way a reflection of their worth. Over time, I would say most of the pushback indeed does come from women. I don't identify as a feminist, for example, and that has been very contentious in terms of my female audience and community, because often they expect me to, right? They think my work is inherently about women's liberation and therefore believe that I should be a feminist or I should start from feminist theory in this work, which I do not do. So I would say over time it's shifted where women are probably, they're definitely more responsive and they're more vocal when they disagree with me.
And so what happened as you're starting to see some viral videos? It's obviously outpacing what your expectations were. What did you do to start diversifying from there? Like, I know you have a Substack with like 8,000 subscribers. You have a substantial LinkedIn following. And then you also mentioned you launched some kind of like paid offering of some sort. What was kind of the linear progression of your business diversifying and expanding?
Yeah, absolutely. So Substack, you're right, was the next one because it just made sense for me to start sharing long form writing. And I really wanted to gauge actually who the audience actually was. Are they just following because these are kind of 4-minute videos, or are they interested more deeply in the overall thesis of being an unpunishable woman? So Substack was my next one, and I started writing on there regularly. Over the last 9 months, my cadence, as in my regularity of writing, has deliberately changed. I've experimented. I did a period of time where I wrote every day, and then I did a period of time where I write 3 times a week, and now we have a regular cadence as a publication on Substack. So Substack was the next one, and that really highlighted to me who the audience really was and who was going the extra mile to subscribe to Substack. But as you know, Substack as a platform is interesting. Only 2% of my TikTok followers came over to Substack. The majority of those Substack subscribers are from the app itself.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
How did you start trying to drive people from TikTok to Substack?
I put Substack link in my bio, and then what I used to do, I'm not very regular with it now because it doesn't make sense, but I used to do weekly TikTok lives. And so, of course, I would have anything between 7,000 to 9,000 people joining in one sitting. So what I would do is tell them about the Substack and say, go and check out the Substack, the link's in my bio. But like I said, when I checked the stats, it was only like 2% of TikTok traffic that was coming to Substack.
That's not bad, actually, when you think of how big TikTok is. So why do you stop doing the TikTok lives?
Well, now I have YouTube, I have Substack, I have TikTok, I have my LinkedIn. It's enough platforms for my business goals to be doubling down on, if that makes sense. The TikTok lives is just additional effort. It's great for community building. So it's great because people who join me maybe in the last 30 days, when they realize I'm live, they will come and say hello, and I get to tell them, go to Substack, go to YouTube. But from an energy resource perspective, it doesn't make sense for me to do them weekly. So realistically, I tend to do them once every 6 weeks, once every 8 weeks. so that I can focus on growing the platforms that I think there is a business model in. And TikTok Live isn't going to be the best route for that.
And what are you publishing the Substack? Are they're like, I mean, I did look at it, but it looks like it's like essays and stuff like
Yes.
that.
Long form essays 3 times a week. So I do more ideological pieces on a Monday about what it means to be an unpunishable woman. On a Wednesday, I do deeper, like a deep dive on one particular thing that a woman has asked me about. And then on a Friday, I do the single woman economy. So that's that structural piece about being a single woman. How does the economy impact us as single women? So I've got a kind of 3 times a week cadence now on Substack. And then I repurpose the Friday single woman economy to LinkedIn, and that is now really growing because I've created a LinkedIn newsletter, so it's an actual publication that goes out every Friday.
And then, so your TikToks, are you now repurposing them for like Instagram and then Substack and stuff and all these other platforms?
Great question. I use a platform called repurpose.io, and I repurpose TikTok videos to Instagram Reels and also to YouTube Shorts. Now, I'm going to be shifting that strategy in the coming week because, as you can imagine, 9 months on, the TikTok videos are great on the TikTok platform, but they don't necessarily now correlate to the long form YouTube videos. And so whilst they've been excellent, obviously, for driving people to the YouTube channel itself, I want to shift those YouTube shorts and the focus of the YouTube shorts. But yes, initially, I was repurposing TikTok videos to Instagram and YouTube shorts.
Yeah. So on Instagram, you have several thousand followers, but it's certainly not as successful as a TikTok. Why do you think that is?
Well, the first thing is I have not focused on Instagram at all. I haven't really invested any time. Secondly, if I'm honest, I think that the formats that I observe working on Instagram, I do not have the time to create right now. So carousels do very well on Instagram. Green screen sharing content does well on Instagram. I don't have the time to repurpose my existing back catalog of content into those formats just to grow Instagram. It really isn't even a big driver of traffic right now for me. And so that's why I haven't invested in it. As one person, the channels that I've got are taking up enough time. And TikTok, for me, has been more powerful, in terms of views and reach. And bringing people into my mailing list, because I forgot to say, aside from Substack, I actually know the importance of own data. So I've been building a mailing list now since January, I would say. And for me, I'd prefer people to go through Substack, the mailing list, and YouTube.
Yeah, so you said that like the Substack allowed you to really see who your true audience was. What is that true audience? It's because obviously you can see the email addresses and sometimes the workplaces where they work, if they're using their work email address, things like that. What were you noticing in that data?
So I would say there's two profile of audience. One is the woman that's between 20 and 32. That woman is usually trying to discover herself, find herself. And that's why she's kind of attracted to the unpunishable woman ethos. And the other is really women between the age of 45, I'd say, and 55. And ironically, in terms of customers, most of the women that have bought a digital product, bought into any of the training programs, they do tend to be between the age of 38 and 50. So I've noticed where the buying is coming from. And then, of course, we've got two audiences in terms of subscribers.
And so speaking of the buying, you mentioned some kind of thing that you launched earlier this year that had like 70 women sign up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I decided to trial launching 2 6-week intensive training programs. One was very focused on helping single women learn how to sell and essentially make more money in their lives. The other one was much more unpunishable woman. So it was much more coaching-like around the mindset of an unpunishable woman. I launched those two things at the same time. In total, I had 105 people sign up and pay. 78 people were in the sales one, and the rest came into the kind of mindset coaching. And that helped me also to understand where the appetite was as well. So I sold out between November and the 1st of January, and then I started teaching them all on the 1st of February.
Okay, and then how much did you sell those for? Like, what was the price?
$500.
$500. Yeah, and wow, that's good. Especially so soon after you like just launched your entire media thing. In fact, I think you said that you've generated like $64,000 so far, and like so you're already generating like $8,000 to $9,000 a month
Yeah.
through this. So you have like 15,000 followers on LinkedIn. Obviously, a lot of stuff that you talk about on TikTok has to do with dating and stuff like that. How does your LinkedIn content differ
Yes.
from your TikTok and Instagram
Absolutely.
content?
So you're bang on there. So I do not talk about that on LinkedIn under the Unpunishable Woman. What I focus on LinkedIn is the single woman economy. So what I do with the single woman economy is I'm talking about the economy and money and finance and how that impacts single women, and more specifically how the rise in single women as economic actors is shifting culture and markets. And so once a week on a Friday, I issue the single woman economy. So I've done issues on solo motherhood and the economics of solo motherhood. I did a deep dive on the travel industry and how solo female travel is shifting the industry and the ways the industry needs to change actually to accommodate us as buying customers and a strong consumer group. So I do it on those economic topics, and that has been very interesting because what I did initially is I put a call to action that said if you're a brand, if you're an investor, if you're an organization and you want the full report that I produce every week, get in contact. And that allowed me to again start to assess appetite from institutions, from organizations. And that has been very, very interesting. We've done 5 issues so far. So this week will be the 6th one.
And these are LinkedIn social media posts, or they're the longer like article formats? Like what do they look like?
Yes, it's the newsletter function on LinkedIn. I haven't had time yet to post daily on my feed, but it's been through the newsletter, and it was launched 2 days ago on LinkedIn. It will now be 3 days actually, and we are already at something like 775 subscribers. In just the 3 days, right, that I put them on there. So it's an interesting one. I still need to, as you know, assess what the appetite is from actual, potential clients. But yes, I'm experimenting over on LinkedIn.
So let's talk YouTube.
Yes.
2 months in, you have 30,000 subscribers. It looks like you're doing the YouTube Shorts, which I'm guessing is the repurposed TikToks, but you also have some long form videos. So what's your thinking on why you decided to wait to launch on YouTube, and like what was kind of your launch strategy for that?
So, in many ways, I knew in the back of my mind that YouTube made sense because my videos on TikTok are actually typically longer than most TikTok videos. So my videos are between 4 and 5 minutes, which is incredibly long considering the average is around 2 minutes, right? So I knew that there was appetite because people would be in the comments saying, I watched this entire video. That was just a recurring comment. And also people were asking me to write a book, which I wasn't about to do very quickly. So I understood that a longer form video platform would work. And so I decided initially to go onto YouTube. I put I shouldn't say random, it was a video that was not edited, no thumbnail. I just put the video up, and that, I think one of the first videos had something like 250,000 views. And that's when I understood, right, if I'm going to do this, I need to have some structure and I need to take it seriously. And I had seen a YouTube video from a YouTuber who talked about her strategy when she first joined the platform was to post every day for 90 days, long form videos. So I'm in the middle of a 90-day posting streak at the moment. And I think that has really enabled me to build up a library of videos as opposed to like random disconnected videos. And so now what I find is people binge the content on YouTube, which is really helpful for retention and people subscribing. I have about 4 videos that make up they're the real drivers of subscriptions because I use the YouTube Studio, the AI tool that they have, where I can literally see data and I can answer questions about where subscribers are coming from. The other thing I now know from using that data tool is that 50% of the people finding me on YouTube came from 2 places, Google and WhatsApp, which I was fascinated by. Yeah. The 50% of it was coming from people Googling Unpunishable Woman and also sharing the videos via WhatsApp.
Because that means it's an international audience, then maybe.
Exactly. And I thought, how interesting is that? So I do use the AI YouTube Studio for the data now, and I ask smarter questions now to really understand where are subscribers coming to. Also, where are they going after my videos? So are they watching more than one? And if they're leaving the channel, what channels are they going to watch? And that has really helped me understand where the channel sits in the overall YouTube world. Yeah.
So walk me through kind of the editorial process of the long form YouTube. Like, is it like you have like a viral short form and you decide to like then set up because obviously it's horizontal versus the vertical, or are you shooting it are you shooting videos with a horizontal camera and then just creating vertical videos from that? Like, how are you doing the horizontal versus vertical type of thing?
I wish I could tell you that I know what I'm doing, but I absolutely do not. So my TikTok videos are recorded on my iPhone in the vertical. I literally have used the repurpose.io platform. It literally just pulls from TikTok directly to YouTube. I do nothing. I don't change anything, edit, repurpose, nothing. So that's what happens for YouTube Shorts. And then in terms of my actual YouTube long form videos, I record on my Mac desktop. It's automatically that vertical, and I record in Riverside. I don't do any editing. I literally download that video and upload it to YouTube. There's no editing. I do one take videos. I don't have time for chopping. I don't have the skills to clip, chop. So we do a one take video. When it says this video is ready to download, I download it and then upload it into YouTube. I've just about learned how to do thumbnails on Canva. So I then go to Canva, put a thumbnail in, download that thumbnail, upload it into YouTube. Boom, we're done. And I go about my day.
So you probably don't know who this person is, but there's this YouTuber named Sam Sulek, and he is a bodybuilder, and he's kind of like this thing that nobody can figure out because he has huge following, like millions of followers, and he's literally like doing no editing whatsoever. He's just setting up a camera and working out. Like there's like, it goes against everything you could think of for what succeeds on social media, and it seems like you're in that same kind of frame of thought. Just be yourself, create content, upload it frequently. Like you're kind of the Casey Neistat rule of YouTube is like post every day, and you will build a following naturally, and you will get better at what you do. Absolutely. And would you say that's like the overriding lesson to be learned from your strategy is like you started on October, you had discipline, and you just like hammered out content and just like kind of built an audience naturally?
Yeah, it's execute, because I know that because I had some bias against social media for my entire life, I knew that if I thought about it too long, I would not crack on and continue. And so it was a case of just keep executing. Just get the videos out. I don't wear makeup in those TikTok videos. My hair is natural. So, and it's funny, over time, those are some of the things that women have commented on, which is the fact that they feel like they know. What they know of me is what I think, not what I look like. And I haven't had to rely on aesthetics to build a community. And that goes in my favor because some days I simply don't have the capacity or interest to perform. So it has worked for me. I just upload a video to YouTube and crack on with my day. I'm not going to be editing it. Now, look, I think in the future, I may change that. I may adapt some of that, but that will be because I've hired someone. It won't be because I'm going to spend the time editing different bits and bobs. And no, I don't have the patience or the skill for it. What I know how to do is convey a message that I feel strongly about. That's what I know how to do. And I know how to do it, whether it's in person and now on camera.
So, looking at your business today, and we'll talk about where you want it to go. But today, is it mainly just those $500 courses, or are you doing like other consulting work? Like, what does your business look like today?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, it is the $500 courses and digital products. Now, what I am doing is transitioning out of the $500 courses. So I've got an intensive on right now. Actually, we're on week 3 this week. This will be the last intensive that I run, because for me, I think I've gotten into my groove with the thought leadership, and in terms of impact and reach, writing a book would be far more impactful, for example, and consultancy would be far more impactful than in 6-week intensives for women. And so that's where I will be shifting to over the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, so getting more into consulting and then writing books. Do you think you want to self-publish a book? Do you want to find like a more traditional publisher?
That's a good question. So I am open to both. I think the unpunishable woman ethos is so impactful that it does deserve reach. And either way, as you know, as the author, you've got to do the marketing work anyway. So that doesn't change. And in many ways, I'm already in that groove now in terms of distribution, etc. So my decision really comes down to, do I want the leverage that could come with a good publisher, traditional publisher, or do I want to, publish myself and still do the same amount of work you have to do often to market your own book anyway? So I have spoken to some publishers and I'm in conversations with agents to understand the industry in more detail to make a more strategic decision about why would I go with a mainstream publisher instead of just, publishing it myself, which you can do pretty quickly these days anyway.
Yeah. So anybody in my audience who works in publishing should definitely reach out. What was my next question? Oh, so like you have like a very big audience, and it's probably going to only get larger. What are your thoughts on like kind of more traditional creator business models like sponsorships and stuff like that?
What do I think? So it's interesting. I have received inbound requests for sponsored posts. Now, here's the thing. I feel the types of requests that have come in so far, I just don't think they align. And it's a very good question you've asked, actually, because a lot of the time the content out there about the business of creation is mostly, from what I can observe, relevant sometimes to creators in the consumer side. So they might have products, they might be in beauty, fashion, etc., especially when they're discussing women. I know that since Cannes has passed, there's a whole load of kind of content that's come out about the B2B creator and the way organizations are now seeing B2B creators. So I'm not opposed to sponsorships. They just have to really be right for my audience. And when I say that, I'm not going to be selling a lip gloss, for example. Like, it doesn't align. Yes, we have 86% female audience, but actually it needs to be, for us, it needs to be aligned with the intellectual thrust of our platform as opposed to consumerism. And I think my audience would feel that difference. I mean, I'll share with you, I've been approached quite a few times by some sex tech companies, right, with kind of specific products around female pleasure. And whilst that might be able to work with my audience, and I have talked about sex a lot in terms of cultural expectations around sex and women, those products specifically, I don't think align, and that's not what the community would be expecting me to, have an affiliate link for example. And so I'm in the process of really trying to figure out what the right fit is for kind of brand partnerships and sponsorships in our community.
Yeah, because even though your business model is B2B, I think when I watch a lot of your videos, like I would think they would fit more in a B2C kind of category. So you could kind of be both at one time. Like you could have the more high priced B2B products, but then depending on what product you could market, like a more kind of B2C kind of sponsorship model. Do you think you would want to find an agent or anything like that to do those sales for you? Or
so that's interesting. So obviously I'm a salesperson at heart. So for it to work for me, I would be looking, and this is really interesting that you asked this question. I was watching a podcast recently with a lawyer who started a law firm. She's based between LA, I think, and New York. She has a law firm specifically for creators. And one of the things she was saying was that her business model, one of the things that attracts creators to her, is that she doesn't take 20% unless she was the one who won the deal. And I think for me as a salesperson, I'm thinking very carefully about, why am I paying an agent 20%, for example, if the inbound inquiries are coming as a result of my IP and my sweat equity, essentially. So for me to bring an agent in, it needs to be because they're going to be adding value, essentially, i.e. they are proactively in rooms and in conversations that I couldn't reach. And those rooms and conversations and those prospective deals are emerging because of them and not essentially still because of my sweat equity and IP itself. That's the way I look at that. And I've seen people talk about their experiences with agents and the fact that actually they were the ones who were negotiating the deals anyway. And so that's what I have in mind. We'll see how time goes, but I will be approaching it from very much a business perspective. Like, what value are you actually adding to our business, as opposed to, are you, and I mean this with grace and respect, but are you actually, are you just doing things that I could do if I wanted to? Or I'm obsessed with AI, I have been for years. I could actually just build an agent that does that, that does that part. So what is the value? Like, you need to be bringing value into the business, getting me into rooms and conversations that only you can.
So when you look ahead 2 years from now, what do you want to be doing then that you're not doing now?
Okay, that's a great question. So I definitely want to be writing books, for sure. I think books are a wonderful way of having impact on people's lives all over the world. So definitely writing books, speaking globally as well. That is something that I would like to be doing. So it's probably writing books, speaking globally, and then the other side, as you know, for me, it is about being able to advise organizations and brands on how they leverage the single economic actor that is the single woman. I think they are definitely missing a trick there. The last deep dive I did was on the travel industry, and the average age of a female solo traveler is 57, but also she spends $18,000 on average per trip. And yet when you look at the marketing in the travel industry, the age group of women that they're targeting is like 30 years younger. And she is spending considerably less, of course, on her average travel trip. And so I think there's some key commercial aspects that certain brands and organizations are missing when it comes to single women and the disposable income, for example, that many of us have.
Do you think you want to do a podcast?
So at the moment, I repurpose one YouTube a week onto a audio channel like Spotify and iTunes. And so what I'm thinking to evolve the platform into is, what I'd like to do on YouTube is introduce guests, etc., into the YouTube format, and then strip the audio for the audio social podcasting platform. So I have some ideas in mind about bringing specialists on to talk to women. For example, one of our most popular videos for single women was about wills, so future estate planning. And a few experts reached out to me and I said, look, I'd love to bring you on to answer questions that came from the community. So I can already see how I can evolve that format on YouTube after my 90-day streak is over. So yes is the answer, but I need to figure out again, how does this fit into our suite as a media company, but also what are the monetization routes as a result?
Okay, Ashanti, those were all the questions I have for you. Where can people find you online?
Come and find me on YouTube. I'd say YouTube and Substack are the best places to come and find Unpunishable Women.
Awesome. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.